I watched 31 films during March 2026, and I'm going to go over all of them. This video is going to be quite a bit different from my previous monthly recaps because I'm going to go from the order when I watched the films instead of best to worst. At the end, I'm going to list my three favorite, three least favorite, biggest surprise, biggest disappointment, and then my overall thoughts for this month. Okay, the first film I watched was Maquia, When the Promised Flower Blooms, which is basically about this girl who raises this kid. She can't age, or if she ages, it's really slow. So it's her experience over time with this kid as the kid gets older. Really sad. Pretty solid film, I would say. Like story wise, it was pretty interesting, but it was just really sad. I watched it dubbed. It's a Japanese anime movie, and I would recommend it if you want to be depressed. The next film I watched was Hellraiser Bloodline, which follows three generations of the same family who are dealing with unleashing an evil force. I would say this film was very weird. I give it 2 stars, and I watched this on the second. Not the best thing I've ever seen. I didn't care for it. I definitely wouldn't recommend it unless you're trying to binge all the Hellraiser films. Also on the second, I watched Come Play, which I didn't actually give it a rating. I've watched this film like 3 times or something, and I think I've watched it too recently, so I didn't have the best experience. Which it's basically about this boy. He has autism, and there's this creature that's in the boy's device, his tablet, and the creature wants to have a friend. Let's just say that. When I watched this film most recently, I didn't enjoy it as much, but I do think I would like it more because I've watched this film like 3 times. I think I just watched it too close to the last time I watched it, so it's kind of my own fault. So I don't really want to give it a rating. On the third, I watched Await Further Instructions, and it's basically just about this family who they wake up on Christmas morning and they realize that they are sealed in their house by this like black substance. And on the television, there's a line that reads, "Stay indoors and await further instructions." I thought this movie was a really interesting concept. I've heard people complain that the acting is not great. I'm not one to know that very well. I'm not very good at telling if acting is good or bad, so I can't really agree or disagree with that too much. I don't think I remember the acting not being the greatest. I believe. I think the film itself is really interesting, and there's this design towards the end that was really cool. So I mean, I give it 3 stars. So you could give it a shot. I mean, it's not the best thing. Just make sure it's streaming free. Like it's not worth paying for. The next film I watched was As the Gods Will, and I watched this on the 5th. I give it 2.5 stars, maybe give it 3. Basically about this group of high schoolers who are forced to play this deadly game at their school from these like terrifying creatures, or honestly pretty silly looking, like a dromedary and this cat. Like, don't take this film seriously. It was just so strange. I don't have like a whole lot to say about this film. I made a video on watching 4 Japanese horror movies recently. I can put in the description. I also made a part 2 to that. So if you want to get more of my opinion on this movie, you can go and watch that. The next film I watched was on the 6th, and it was No Escape Room, which I gave 2.5 stars. So it's basically about this father and daughter who go to an escape room, and they discover that there is something sinister about the place. And I thought the idea was interesting. I kind of think that they maybe should have focused a bit more on the escape room elements. You kind of keep me glued to my seat, but I thought it was interesting at least. And I personally like the ending. It's a bit goofy, but I liked it enough. I wouldn't really recommend this film unless it sounds interesting to you. On the 8th, I watched Escape Room Tournament of Champions, which is about these people who find themselves in these escape rooms and they realize that they've all played these games before and they have to figure out how to survive. I give this film 3.5 stars. It's technically probably not a masterpiece, but I think for the most part it was at least entertaining. I watched it with my sister. She liked it. When we were watching it towards the end, the quality, I was watching on Tubi and the quality got like really bad for some reason, like less than 420p. It was pretty bad. Like it was basically unwatchable. It was like pixels. But we got through it, and I liked the movie. The next film I watched was on the 9th, and it's The Hunt, and I give it 2.5 stars. So basically, this is about these strangers who wake up in this clearing, and they don't know where they are or how they got there. And there's this like conspiracy theory, elitist group that's gathering in a remote location to hunt them down, but it doesn't go according to plan because one of them is able to fight back. This is a very political film. I don't really get into politics. I don't really like to see sides attacking each other. But this film does kind of attack both sides. It doesn't focus only on one, which was nice. And I think overall the movie is okay. The gore was good. I just couldn't. It couldn't get me invested. The next film I watched was on the 10th, which I gave 3 stars, and that's Hellraiser Inferno. And honestly, I could even raise this to 3.5 stars. I really like this film. It's about a detective who solves the puzzle box that unleashes a diabolical demon, Pinhead, and those around him begin to meet tragic fates, and he has to try to conquer this horrifying villain. I think I'm a bit of a sucker for this detective angle. I mean, I know this isn't probably what most people watch Saw for, but I watch it for the detective angle. I really enjoy the actual story. The Saw traps are good, don't get me wrong, but they don't usually get me very much. It's more the detective angle that I really like, or the story. And so Hellraiser has a bit more of a detective angle, and I enjoyed it, honestly. I would recommend Hellraiser Inferno. On the 11th, I watched Hellraiser Seeker, which I give 2.5 stars. I honestly can't really remember a whole lot of Hellraiser Hellseeker, so it's probably not that good. The film after that I watched was Terrifier 3, which is basically about Art the Clown massacring people, and I didn't give it a rating. If I were to give it a rating, I'd probably give it 2.5 stars. I'm gonna be honest, I want to like the Terrifier films. I've watched the second and third, but I can just never get into it. The gore and stuff, that doesn't really get to me, so it doesn't disturb me much. There might be 1 or 2 scenes that disturb me. I like Art the Clown a bit. I think I want to like these film franchise, but I just can't. I don't even know why completely. I just can't get into it. On the 13th, I watched Carve the Slitmouth Woman, which I gave 3 stars. It's basically about this. I don't want to say rumor, but there's this scissor wielding person who is killing people, and she'll go up to someone and be like, "Am I pretty?" And the person's response would almost always lead to their death. It's just an interesting story, but it's definitely not a masterpiece. It's a bit lower budget, I believe, and a lot less known. I would recommend it if you're into J-horror. The next film I watched was Liverleaf. So this story follows Nozaki Haruka, a middle school student who transfers to a school in a small town because of her father's work. But she becomes the victim of horrific bullying, and since the school's going to be closing in 2 months after graduation, no one is willing to help her. It's a bit disturbing. I would recommend it. I gave it 3.5 stars. I could probably lower it to 3. I enjoyed the first half. The second half, I didn't enjoy it as much. The next film after that, I didn't give it a rating, but I watched it on the 14th, and it's Kotoko. It's about this lady who's suffering from double vision, and she tries to take care of her baby during these hallucinations, and there's a lot of nervous breakdowns, and a not very good relationship. It's very disturbing. I'll give you that. If you're up for something that's gonna probably bother you a bit, I'd recommend it. But that being said, it is a disturbing film, so just a warning. Also on the 14th, I watched The Ringer, which I gave 3.5 stars. This film does not deserve this rating, but I just had a really good time when watching it. It's about this guy who he enters the Special Olympics because his uncle is in a bunch of debt, and he needs money to help his friend. And he doesn't have special needs, but he pretends he does. It's honestly it's not the funniest film I've ever watched, but I watched with my brother, and I just really had a good time while watching it. The next film I watched was on the 16th at 3 stars, and it's Teki Teki. It's about the upper torso of a female who claws around Japan searching for her lower half. Her half was severed by a train accident. It's definitely a interesting idea, and I think the idea of Teki Teki, I would like to see that in more films, so I'd recommend it. I also want to mention in the description, I'm going to list where the films are streaming as of making the video. I mean, if you come back in a year, it's probably not going to be accurate to most of the services, but I still want to list that for the people who do want to watch some of these films. On the 18th, I watched Hellraiser Deader, which I gave 2 stars. Man, I wanted to like this. Basically about this tough as nails reporter who is led to this cult and the evil Pinhead, and any moment could be her last. I wanted to like it. There's this whole cult, these deaders, but I just couldn't get into it. There was way too much nudity in this film. In this train, you'll know. It was just I don't know, too much. Definitely just too much for me. The next film I watched was on the 19th, which was Hellraiser Hellworld, which I gave 2.5 stars. It is basically just about these hardcore internet gamers who are invited to a special party thrown by the website Hellworld, and they endure a night of unspeakable terror. I thought this film was going to have them being put in a video game, and that's not the case. I learned that a little bit before I watched it, and I wish that that was the case. It's a really bad film, but it's enjoyable, so I can recommend it if you want it so bad it's good, I think. With that being said, it's pretty bad. Also on the 19th, I watched Hansel and Gretel. It's about this guy who driving on this country road, and he drives off the road, and when he wakes up there's this mysterious girl who takes her to her like fairy tale like house in the middle of the forest with her family, and he soon realizes that he doesn't know how to leave the forest. Really interesting idea, 3.5 stars. I would recommend giving this film a shot though. I thought it was really interesting and pretty good. And towards the end, it does a couple things that were honestly a bit disturbing. On the 20th, I watched Gonji Haunted Asylum, which I didn't give a rating. If I were, probably like 2.5, maybe 3. A crew of horror web series traveled to an abandoned asylum for a live broadcast, but they encountered much more than expected as they moved deeper inside the nightmarish old building. I heard this film was really scary. I watched it and it wasn't very dark when I watched it, I'll say that, and the subtitles were really like buggy, I would say, like they were delayed, like they weren't lined up correctly, and so I ended up switching services, but it was like towards the end, and I was watching with my sister. I feel like you probably want to watch this film in the dark alone, so I didn't get a full experience, so that's why I didn't rate this, because I just feel like this film is meant for you to be alone in the dark. A lot of people really like this film and say it's really scary, so I would at least recommend giving it a shot. The next time I watched was on the 21st. I gave it 3.5 stars, and it's The Mimic. A mother of a missing child takes in a lost girl she finds in the woods, but soon begins to wonder if she is even human. I really like this film. I gave it 3.5 stars. I thought this concept was really interesting. I remember being a bit scary towards the end. It does end quite abruptly. I feel like it could have taken a little bit more time, but I don't know if I exactly wanted it to be any longer, because the film's not like that long. It's like an hour and 40 minutes, but I just personally would prefer it being staying an hour and 40 minutes and not getting any longer. So I wish they kind of maybe changed the script up a little bit. On the 23rd, I watched The Welling, which I gave 3 stars. Probably deserves more, but I'll get to that. It's about a stranger who arrives in a little town, and soon after, a mysterious sickness starts spreading. A policeman is drawn to the incident and is forced to solve the mystery in order to save his daughter. This is a pretty long film, so I think that's why I didn't give it a high rating. I just couldn't stay invested the entire time, but I think for the majority, or at least half of it, I was invested, and I really wanted to like this film, and I mean, to an extent, I did. I gave it 3 stars, but I don't know, I just had a hard time focusing. That's probably my own fault. I mean, I probably don't have the best attention span, so maybe when I watch it again, I'll enjoy it more. The next film I watched was on the 24th, and that's Hellraiser Revelations. This is an abomination. I gave it 1.5 stars. 2 friends in Mexico discover the lament configuration and unleash Pinhead, but one decides to try to survive by swapping himself with someone else. Once they go missing, family members go in search of them, but find Pinheads that I don't know where to begin with this film. No offense to the actor for Pinhead, but he has this like baby face, and so every time I see Pinhead, I just can't take him seriously. They have this little found footage element, but they don't use it a lot. I don't watch a lot of found footage, so I don't know if I would prefer that. I don't think I'm a big fan of found footage, but I mean, it's at least something a bit unique. The acting is horrendous, and I'm not good at telling if acting's bad, but I could tell acting was bad in this film. It's just not a very good film. On the 25th, I watched Hellraiser Judgment, which I gave 2.5 stars, and I really wanted to give it higher. 3 detectives try to stop a diabolical serial killer, but they are sucked into a maze of otherworldly horror where hellish denizen, including the auditor, the assessor, and the jury, await to pass judgment. I really like how this film expands the Hellraiser lore and gives us these characters that aren't Cenobites, otherworldly creatures, and I think that's so cool. Just kind of get into this film. I think it wasn't a very good film, but I really wanted to like it. On the 25th, I also watched Suicide Club. Oh boy. It's about a bizarre mass suicide of 54 high school girls throwing themselves in front of a subway train that appears to instigate a string of suicides around the country. Detective Kuroda strives to find the answer, which isn't as simple as he hoped. This film, very interesting, very it feels a bit layered. Like there's quite a bit of meaning to it. I was expecting something else, so it's my bad. So I didn't enjoy it as much. Maybe if I rewatched it, but it was just so strange. I mean, there's a part where it literally breaks out into a musical. It's just a very strange film. And then the next film I watched was on the 26th, which was the Scissors Massacre, which is basically about this girl who gets acid on her face and it kind of disfigures her a bit, and her mom had just been murdered, and there's just a lot of awful things happening, and murders are taking place, and it's pretty interesting. It's somewhat related to Carve the Slit Mouth Woman, but it's not really. Like, it's kind of confusing how it works. I gave it 3 stars. The story's pretty interesting. And on the 28th, I watched Uzumaki, which I gave 3 stars, and I sound like a hypocrite because this film is literally about the inhabitants of a small Japanese town who become increasingly obsessed with and tormented by spirals. So this film is like very strange, like way stranger than Suicide Club, but I knew it was going to be strange going in. I mean, it's based on the manga by Junji Ito, and he makes a lot of strange mangas. His art is very strange, so I expected it to be strange. I watched it with my sister, and it was just an experience. Go in and just expect something very strange. Don't expect much, and just go into it blind. Now on the 28th, I also watched Primate, which I give 3.5 stars, which is basically about these teenagers who go to spend their vacation at this one of the teenagers' family home in Hawaii, and they have a pet chimpanzee, Ben, who contracts rabies and starts attacking them. It's a very simple concept, but it's done really well. 3.5 stars. I was surprised to get some likable characters. There were some gnarly scenes, specifically one with this guy on the bed. I don't want to spoil it, but I really liked that scene. It was really brutal. So I would recommend. I watched Anaconda, which is about a group of friends who are trying to recreate the Anaconda film. To be fair, I've never seen the original, and this is like not a recreation of Anaconda. It's a movie about recreating Anaconda. I wasn't the biggest fan of this film, and I wanted to like it more. I laughed a little bit at the beginning, but I didn't laugh as much as I was hoping. Okay, on the 30th, I watched Teki Teki 2, which is a continuation a bit of Teki Teki 1. I didn't like this one as much. I don't know why. I gave it 2.5 stars. I just couldn't get invested. But to be fair, when I watched it, I don't think I was in the mood for it. So I probably should have watched it a different day. And then on the 31st, at 3.5 stars, I watched A Working Man. It's about this guy who his boss's daughter gets kidnapped, and he goes and beats up these human traffickers to try to save her. And I give it 3.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. It's Jason Statham. He's beating up people, so it's good. Okay, so I would say my 3 favorite films I watched were Primate, A Working Man, and probably Hansel and Gretel. Not in a particular order. My least favorite were Hellraiser Revelation, Hellraiser Bloodline, Hellraiser Deader. A lot of the Hellraiser films aren't very good. My biggest surprise was A Working Man. I heard it wasn't very good, but I really enjoyed it. And my biggest disappointment was Suicide Club because it wasn't what I was expecting. So I think I went in with the wrong expectations. My overall thoughts on this month: I don't think it was the best month, but it wasn't terrible. I watched a lot of films, but none of them were that great in my opinion. But with that, those are my thoughts. I would love to know your guys' opinions. I gotta get to editing this video. Remember, in the description, I will have listed where each of these films are streaming. Though, I mean, if you're watching this a year later, it's probably going to be outdated. And with that, bye.